There was a gentleman who started a lawmaker on fire in live court for having an affair with his wife. Good morning. Today is Wednesday, October 1st. This is the Daily Sting. I'm your host, Birdie. I'm going to go through 3 stories in 20 minutes with zero bullshit. We're going to get into this first story here, which is this Harvard trade school. This is an interesting story because I've seen conflicting reports. I don't know if this is real or fake. Welcome to the Daily Sting. You going to get real news or you're going to get fake news? I don't know. We're going to read the headlines just like everybody else does, and we're going to try to figure it out. My first thought of Harvard getting a trade school, I was kind of thinking to myself, like, damn, that's going to be the most expensive and high quality work you're probably going to get. If you can imagine a plumber going to Harvard, they're going to know everything. They're going to know the materials and the molecular makeup of whatever pipe they're going to be putting into your house. Trump told reporters on Tuesday in the Oval Office that the White House had, quote, reached a deal with Harvard. Now, he did caution this deal had not been finalized. It was a little bit of an unexpected announcement, which I think everybody here who sees this headline can be like, yeah, Harvard's getting a trade school? What? I mean, yeah, it's unexpected. A judge had a ruling against Trump and the administration's $2.7 billion in federal grants and contracts to that university. So Harvard was still facing a slew of federal investigations, and this administration has continued to levy new threats against the university's access to federal funding since that judge's order. Trump did say that reaching a deal to bring the trades into Harvard would mean that Harvard's sins are forgiven. Under the agreement, he said that a series of trade schools would be ran by Harvard. They put up $500 million interest, and everything else would go to that account, meaning that it would go to the trade school. He said it's a big investment in trade school done by very smart people. That was a real quote that I just read, and I'm not really sure what that means. The trades seem to be dying off. I have a handful of buddies, and I'm in my early 30s, and my buddies that get into the trades, they love it. They also work a shit ton. So there's clearly a need for work. And I do think that the trades are going to come roaring back in a way, especially with all the AI and the jobs that could replace. I'd be curious to see what ends up happening. And if Harvard does end up getting a trade school, that's got to be like, actually, without rambling on about that, I want to just ask a question. This is what popped into my head. Do you think that people in the trades would look to hire Harvard trade school people? Or do you think they'd want people that came up through your classic apprenticeship? And I'm not sure what the Harvard trade school would even look like, but for whatever reason, I can't get it out of my head that like people are going to be like welding in lab coats. The Harvard provost, John Manning, he declined to answer any questions regarding the talks about this. That's wild. I think it's real. Idaho is a portal to hell. Absolutely. And would you be surprised that there was another missing woman wandering around in her underwear with bloody feet in the middle of the woods? A group of dirt bikers are being credited with helping locals rescue a missing hiker. Heather Wayment was reported missing by family members on Wednesday, September 17th, one day after she was last seen. The Blaine County Sheriff's Office said that her vehicle was located in the Prairie Creek area of Blaine County, but she was nowhere to be found. She ended up being located by a group of mountain bikers more than 17 miles from her last location on Thursday, September 18th. The bikers from Pocatello, brothers Tommy and Vinton Gwynn, and their friend Shelton Robinson came across Wayment in the mountains of Camas County. They said she was in her underwear and that her feet were bleeding. Here's a quote from Tommy telling people that they stopped because they could tell she was obviously in bad shape. But what was odd is that she didn't want help at first. She was scared and very guarded. It took about a half an hour before she would talk. Oof. Yeah. Not that I would doubt that a woman found wandering around in her underwear with bloody feet would be a little bit hesitant to talk to two guys that approach her on dirt bikes. If she escaped, that makes sense. However, She did eventually let her guard down and told us her name and that she was lost. She hadn't watched the news in a few days, and they had no idea that people were even looking, or she had no idea people were even looking for her. Did they even try to give us a reason as to why she was missing? Did she say like she was kidnapped? Was there anything nefarious going on as far as with how she got lost? Why is she 17 miles away? I mean, 17-mile hike, I guess, is doable, but there's no further information other than a group of bikers helped locate and rescue a missing woman. She was missing for about 2 or 3 days before she was found in bad shape. I don't know what I would do in that situation. I would obviously help somebody, but I feel like I would be a little bit nervous too, as far as, all right, so this lady must clearly be somewhat close to, if she was taken or kidnapped, I'd be keeping my head on a swivel and looking over my shoulder, making sure that nobody's following us. I'd also probably immediately call for help just when I first see her and get the initial, like, oh shit. So I don't know if they waited 30 minutes before they called, which a 30-minute delay in a 911 call in Idaho seems to be a record time. This last story, a scorned husband set a lawyer on fire for having an affair with his wife. When I first saw this headline, I thought to myself, that lawyer has balls of steel. If he's a divorce attorney, which I'm sure this has probably happened at least one time in the world somewhere, but man, you got a lady who's going through a divorce to then have an affair with her and go represent her in court to her ex-husband. Is You got some balls to do that. Michael Bucks Hayes was arrested in July after pouring gasoline on Lee Volger inside his office and igniting him. That's crazy. Holy shit. Now, it remains unclear if there's any truth to the claim that Vogler engaged in an affair with his wife. However, I don't think that it justifies lighting another man on fire as much as you would want to. Volger's wife, Blair, told the court that her husband had suffered second and third degree burns to 60% of his body. And according to his wife, it took 35% of his skin to cover the burns. Jesus. He also suffered burn shock and septic shock, as well as burning up his lungs due to the smoke. He's been in the hospital ever since the incident. And again, this is back in July. He has 2 children and a wife. 3 witnesses testified at the hearing. Wow. That's wild. It's really sad, actually, too. Those type of situations, they are always so emotionally escalated. Most times, rightfully so, especially if there's an affair going on and you have no idea. I can see why you get angry. The amount of violence that occurs towards the other person engaging that in that act versus your partner has always confused me. A lot of people, rather than getting mad at their spouse, they'll get mad at the other person. But their spouse was engaging in that behavior too. So that's always perplexed me. Not that you wouldn't be pissed, especially if you're seeing that person out in public. I get that. And violence towards anybody in that situation should not be the answer. And I just think it's weird that a lot of people will go after the person that's like sleeping with their wife or with their husband instead of their wife and husband. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Send this to your friends, especially if they like to tune into a contrarian thinking style live stream or news. If you have not tuned into a live with the Hive, that goes live. Jesus, if you haven't tuned into a live with the Hive, that goes live at 7 p.m. Central each night. Surprised that I was able to say that so quickly. Here's a clip from our live dig last night. If you've been looking into the Idaho 4 case, you're going to want to go check that out. I originally said I was going to stop posting the quick cuts of the live, but I believe what I'm going to do, just because of the amount of requests I've had to bring those back, I am going to be posting the quick cuts as well the next morning again. And I want you to take a peek at this clip here. And the lens that we're looking through with the Idaho 4 case, if you're interested in that, is we're going back to the beginning, forgetting everything that we think we know about the case, and now looking at all of the documents and photo dumps that we've finally got access to now. It's very interesting. Going back to that lady, the quote fake reporter saying, was it a female accomplice? Well, what if 4 students dead, another in the hospital? What if it was a girl? And what if it let's assume that at face value, the 4 roommates that they said are dead. What if it was a girl? What if it was the killer? And maybe was saying, for all we know, it could have been a perpetrator. Could have said that she escaped because maybe she was cut up, said there were defensive wounds. You guys following me? And oh man, look at that. See, the hive is alive. It's alive. It's alive. Yes. Dude. Stop it, Tony. Damn you. It's a new theory, though. That is a new theory, so I have to give you credit on that. Right. That is a fact. Right. Yeah. That's what I mean. I've never thought about that. Guys, think about how many times you've seen that play out in movies where it's like somebody who actually committed the crime gets injured, but the other person's dead and they act like they were the one that was attacked. Wow. See, that's the type of thought process we need to have. Who was the one that reminded us? I forgot who it was, but I got to reiterate again. Thank you. Right. Right. That's a high IQ move. Doesn't mean that it's morally right, but that's high IQ. Have we ever thought of this? Is this why they've blacked out the rooms? Is this why there's another in the hospital that we would have seen 5 people? Have we ever thought about that? 4 were dead, 1's in a hospital. The unconscious person was actually the perp. I've never thought of that. I have never thought of that. I hope everybody has a great Wednesday, and I'll see you tonight at 7 p.m. Central. Cheers.